this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Owning a home is full of surprises. Some wonderful, some not so much. And when something breaks, it can feel like the whole day unravels. That's why HomeServe exists. For as little as $4.99 a month, you'll always have someone to call. A trusted professional ready to help, bringing peace of mind to 4.5 million homeowners nationwide. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to homeserve.com. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on what your kids are spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/iHeart.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Fending for yourself. How many kids does that apply to in this world that we live in now? I know one that it did, in fact, apply to. Tylee Ryan. Tylee was a young lady. She had seen the life that her mother had lived. 5 husbands, multiple moves, dissettlement. Tylee had essentially become the anchor in her family. Certainly as that applied to her little brother, J.J. Vallow. Always envisioned them clinging to one another. There's that image where they're hugging each other very tightly, and I would think that in their world, that's really all they had to hold on to for stability was one another. But just like with J.J., we found out a lot of disturbing news about how Tylee met her end, because we've heard from the forensic pathologist that did her examination. In this episode, we're going to break it down. We're going to discuss it. The horror of Tylee's death. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. There is no satisfaction, and my listeners know how much I hate the word closure, because it doesn't exist, particularly when it comes to death. You get answers, and some answers are just wanting. They're unsatisfying, I think, because you haven't quite filled in all of the blanks. And unfortunately, with Tylee Ryan's death, that's kind of the situation we find ourselves in right now. But what I can say is that her death was horrific. Dave, Mack, would you agree with that assessment?
100%. What we know about Tylee Ryan and her passing is it's frustrating and sad. I say that not lightly. Frustrating because we don't still to this moment know all the things you would normally know about somebody who died when you have remains to examine. I say remains because there was not a body to examine, as one would expect when you say body. What happened to Tylee Ryan, and we don't even know exactly when, what we do know is that Tylee Ryan was last seen September 8th in Yellowstone Park in a picture with her mother her little brother JJ, and her uncle Alex Cox, who was Lori Vallow's brother. We have that picture, and we have some other information that we know she was alive with the family September the 8th. And then we know she's missing until June 9th of 2020. What took place in the interim is where people like you come in. How did they find Tylee Ryan?
I think that to say buried is inaccurate. I prefer the term discarded with an attempt to cover up. Burial, to me, when you say that, it goes to honoring. You know what I'm saying, Dave? When we honor someone, we bury them. She was not. This young woman, she's in that weird space and time. She's 17.
Actually, she died 2 weeks before her 17th birthday.
Yeah, I mean, right on the cusp. And,
Yeah.
you know, the world's about to open up to her. And unfortunately, I think in a very bad way, it had already opened up to her. She had seen things that I think that by virtue of the way that her mother chose to live her life, she had been exposed to. Just the dissettlement in and of itself that she had had to endure for all those years.
It's very important to note two things really quickly. One, when we did a program about J.J. Vallow and how his body was recovered, and his body was recovered. And if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to do so. But what happened with Tylee Ryan, totally different. It was like two totally separate things, not connected by anything. And you mentioned that Tylee had been through a lot with her mother. Well, her mother was married 5 times. When you watch the interview of Tylee Ryan with police after Charles Vallow was murdered by Alex Cox, watch that interview. And in the times after, she seems unaffected. Tylee Ryan seemed totally unaffected. She actually was emulating what her mother was doing. They were joking, talking like it was just another day. She's copying her mother and no emotion, giggling, laughing, moving on. So Tylee Ryan was so impacted by the lifestyle that her mother led that her demise and the way she was discarded shows something, a total disconnect from life and love.
That's rooted, I think, in something else, that touch of reality, that dose of reality in her short life. It was read into the record in the trial. By the way, Lori Vallow's trial is actually going on right now as we're laying this down. It came out in testimony on the part of the forensic pathologist that he had had a chance to review Tylee's medical records. And I was kind of surprised by this. She had lived a very short life, but in that time, she had been diagnosed with anxiety. She had gone through having ovarian cyst. And get this, she had actually suffered pancreatitis in that short life. Pancreatitis is a miserable condition, and ovarian cysts are certainly unpleasant as well. And then you have this anxiety. You know what? 17 years old, why does she have anxiety? I'm a firm believer, that many times illnesses manifest themselves as a result of stressors in your life and that sort of thing. And you take its measure by thinking that this person that she's attached to at the hip, her mother, has literally drugged this child through a keyhole her entire life through all these various relationships and situations that they've been in. You'll never convince me, you're not going to have things manifest in your life physically.
What is pancreatitis exactly, Joe? I have no idea.
Well, it's an inflammation of the pancreas, and it's deadly, actually. I mean, it's super deadly, and many times it's associated with things like elevated cholesterol. Not that she was, but, you'll have people that have problems with chronic alcoholism develop pancreatitis. There's any number of reasons why you can develop it, but it is an infection of the pancreas. Very painful. I mean, it comes along with like horrible abdominal pain, high fever. It can go systemic as it impacts the totality of your system, the way your pancreas functions. Remember, the pancreas, controls insulin in your body. Just a horrible set of circumstances. And you couple that with everything that she was having to endure, right before she was murdered. She's not yet 17, and she's dealing with the homicide of her stepfather at the hand of her uncle.
And please add in there, Joe, that Tylee Ryan was at home and knew the truth of what had transpired. You mentioned stress and worry, and that can lead to some of these things that she was experiencing.
Yeah, and here's another little nugget kind of picked up on friends of mine that are in the media that have been following kind of the family dynamic of this more so than I have. Try to stick more with the forensics, even though in this case it's really hard, as you can see, to kind of hide my feelings relative to it. But in this particular case, from what I'm hearing, she would not stand for some of the stuff that her mother would engage in. She would be combative with her. She would make comments to her. She was not just going to go along with the mom because mom said that this is what she could do. You know, she's not another man coming into her mother's life that her mother can manipulate with her beauty and sex appeal and whatever else that she's, you know, trying to sell to whomever is coming down the track. Tylee has seen behind the curtain. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what? She showed that to people that came into Lori's life. For instance, that Lori Vallow's best friend was Melanie Gibb. And Melanie Gibb, it was brought up in trial that Tylee Ryan didn't particularly care for Melanie Gibb. So I think that while she has a mother that is dragging her, you mentioned dragging through a keyhole, I think that's a great identifier there. But that maybe Tylee didn't overreact with her mother, but it manifested itself in the way that Tylee looked at Lori's friends that were also part of this crazy world that Tylee wasn't buying into, which is why Tylee had to go. Tylee wasn't on board.
They had made an assessment that she's one of these dark spirits, or however they were framing it, you know, as a justification for these things. But what we do know, this new space that her mother had chosen to occupy or was planning on occupying, this place that's out in this beautiful area of the country out there in eastern Idaho, it ended in sheer horror. And it actually wound up being Tylee's resting place after she was apparently murdered.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Hi, I'm Cindy Crawford, and I'm the founder of Meaningful Beauty. When Dr. Sabah and I decided to do a skincare line together, he said to me, we are going to give women meaningful beauty. And I said, that's exactly right. We want to give women meaningful beauty, which means each and every product is meaningful. It has a reason to exist. It's efficacious. You're going to get results. And then you just go out and live your life.
Meaningful Beauty. Confidence is beautiful. Learn more at meaningfulbeauty.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Are you a fraud-paying American? It's a fact that 1 in 4 honest, hard-working, tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity theft. With LifeLock Identity Theft Protection, though, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, and get you your money back. Last year, the IRS flagged over $16 billion in refunds for identity fraud. That's billions of dollars that could come from your salary, overtime, or second job. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second for your personal information and alerts you to threats you could easily miss on your own. And if your information does fall into the wrong hands, only LifeLock has U.S.-based restoration specialists who are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. Because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart and save up to 40% your first year. That's 40% off at LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
If you spend any time out in rural America, if you're out on a farm, don't know of any farm that doesn't have a place where you burn brush. Down here in the South, they call it a burn pile, where you can take limbs and things that break off of trees and whatnot, and you save it up and kind of gather it, and maybe you'll have a bonfire, or maybe you'll just stand out there and burn it and make sure it doesn't spread, and then you walk away and everything is said and done. They had a place like this. There was this location that Chad Daybell had, on the backside of his property adjacent to this big red building, which I've always suspected had something to do with the deaths of these children, that was just out back of it, where it looked more like a fire ring, actually. But it was also known as a location where Chad Daybell and his wife, Tammy, would bury pets. And as it turned out, this is where Tylee Ryan's body was found, Dave.
And you mentioned that it was a burn pile. A burn pile, you burn trash and rubbish, but also in that same ring, as you mentioned, there were benches around there where that family roasting marshmallows, having s'mores, and they chose that location, the pet cemetery location, to actually discard the body of Tylee Ryan. I don't know how that impacted the investigation, but I'm really curious, Joe, when you start digging around something like this and you have what you know is a pet cemetery area and you have obviously fire, what are you finding as an investigator as you start looking for remains?
Throw a word out to you, stratification. I don't mean that in a sociological standpoint. I'm talking about from a geological standpoint. We have strati relative to the ground, where you have various layers of earth. And this would have been stratification in the sense of recent. And when I say recent, I'm not talking hundreds and thousands of years. I'm talking about in the recent history, where you do this layering, if you will, of things. So for every bit of wood that you burned or other items that you're trying to dispose of via fire, it burns down and it settles, right? And then just imagine that progressively becomes more compressed over a period of time. You burn more items, you throw more stuff in, you're getting this strata of all of these elements that have been burned down and rendered down over the years. And where they found Tylee's remains, this earth would have been probably a bit more loose, if you will. It had been, the earth was probably turned more regularly. With JJ's remains, when they went out to that retention pond or dried up pond or whatever that area is, whatever they're calling it, where his remains were found, that earth had not been turned. Beautiful green grass all around except for that one area. But when you get to an area where you've got a lot of debris that's just been settling there for a while, and you might add to it, the soil is going to look disrupted as well. So when you show up as an investigator, you're going to have to take a long, hard look. And it might not just be your sight that you're relying on when you're looking around. It might be smell. It very well might be smell, because you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm smelling something that is obviously organic. It is decomposing, and you catch wind of it. And the reason that you might catch wind of it, and this is absolutely horrible, but the forensic anthropologist in this case, her assessment of Tylee's remains, she said that there had been animal activity in her remains. So she's referring to a small mammal. She doesn't know what type of small mammal, but you've got possums. Famously, Chad Daybell had mentioned a large raccoon, part of this alibi he had put forward when he was talking to his wife, Tammy. Raccoons will feast as well. You have any number of rodents that will do this. If, in fact, rodents or some small mammal had made their way to all that remained of Tylee, that means that they would have disrupted the soil. And when they disrupt the soil, they open it up. They're not going to go back and recover it, okay? So if you get close enough, you begin to detect an odor, okay? And if you look very carefully, that's why it's always very important with a case like this to not just simply have a forensic anthropologist consult on a case where they're back at a laboratory. You physically need them out there. They're amazing people. I've got a couple of friends that are forensic anthropologists, and they are I'm not going to say they're OCD by nature. They're the type of people that can look at ground and they see things that I might just regard as a rock and ain't a rock. They have the ability to read ground the way that nobody else can. And so if you physically have the forensic anthropologist out there, which they actually did, Dave, actually at the scene, they can take a look at a space of ground, even in a burn area, and they can see lines of demarcation that might indicate where a burial has taken place, kind of the margins or the borders, if you will, of where the soil has been disrupted, where they actually detect a pattern. And I've had this happen a couple of times over my career where I would be staring at something and I was staring at what I should stare at, but I don't recognize it. And then it takes the forensic anthropologist to say, okay, do you see this deviation right here? This delineates the borders. And you start to stare at it. And it's like, you remember those old 3D paintings that you would look at and they say you got to stare at it long enough, and it's kind of like that.
All of a sudden you see the old woman. Yeah.
The image just kind of pops for you all of a sudden, and it's revelatory at that moment. And once you identify it, the tough part really begins in, because you have to begin to lay your grid out. And of course, with Tylee, her body's not intact. So you've got deposition of human remains that are spread out over an area. I can't give you the exact dimensions, but I know that they're spread out. They were not recovered in one piece. And if this helps at all, Dr. Warren, the forensic pathologist, actually made a statement. I'm kind of paraphrasing right now, but you know, he did make this kind of offhanded remark in his testimony under direct when he was being asked about the receipt of Tylee's remains at the Ada County coroner's office. How do you receive remains? He said, well, normally I receive remains in a body bag. So how'd you receive these? In multiple bags. Tylee arrived at the coroner's office in Ada County, Idaho, in pieces, not one intact body.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Now I'd like to introduce you to Meaningful Beauty, the famed skincare brand created by iconic supermodel Cindy Crawford. It's her secret to absolutely gorgeous skin. Meaningful Beauty makes powerful and effective skincare simple, and it's loved by millions of women. It's formulated for all ages and all skin tones and types, and it's designed to work as a complete skincare system, leaving your skin feeling soft, smooth, and nourished. I recommend starting with Cindy's full regimen, which contains all 5 of her best-selling products, including the amazing youth-activating melon serum. This next generation serum has the power of melon leaf stem cell technology. It's melon leaf stem cells encapsulated for freshness and released onto the skin to support a visible reduction in the appearance of wrinkles. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews, why not give it a try? Subscribe today and you can get the amazing Meaningful Beauty system for just $49.95. That includes our introductory 5-piece system, free gifts, free shipping, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. All of that available at meaningfulbeauty.com.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on what your kids are spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/iHeart.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
It's a partnership when you work together in forensics. There's multiple practices that forensic pathologists can align themselves with in their forensic practice. First thing I think that probably comes to mind is traditionally like forensic pathologist and forensic odontologist or forensic dentist. Toxicology, certainly, you're always trying to decide what was going on with the chemistry of the body, what was going on inside. There's some peripheral people sometimes will consult a radiologist, certainly neurologist that will examine brains, but I don't know of any other marriage that exists in forensic practice that is so kind of conjoined as that between the forensic pathologist and the forensic anthropologist. They're kind of doing the same thing, only the forensic anthropologist is really focused on human skeletal remains and what they can learn from the bone. Physicians can point you in the right direction with it, but these people, they spend years and years going through their doctoral programs out there to learn how to read bones and tell the story that's left behind, because sometimes that's all that remains.
The autopsy for JJ took about 4 hours. The autopsy for Tylee Ryan took him about a week. The body was burned. Was there an odor that would be recognizable as that of a decomposed individual, even after being in the elements, buried in the dirt, burned? What kind of condition are we expecting out of this? Are you going to smell it when you start digging? Are you going to smell it when you're standing on top of the ground?
In the state in which they have mentioned that Tylee's remains were in, probably once you break the earth, really substantially break the earth, a cadaver dog would hit immediately. But for kind of our spectrum, our olfactory spectrum as humans, it would take turning the earth to really smell it. The decomposition that you smell relative to a decaying remain has to do with soft tissue. Bones will have an odor to them, but it's not as profound as is associated with soft tissue. And Tylee, she still had, and this is horrible to say, but I'm going to get its body bags. We're going to talk about this, but she still had, her bowel was still present. Her heart, though compromised and kind of shrunken, I think probably as related to heat, was still there. Her lungs were still there. So not everything had been eradicated. In total, the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Christensen, had stated that she had 100 bones that were found. And of course, the human body's got over 200. So some had been rendered down or just impossible to have recovered. She had also mentioned that there was some type of animal that is out there, and animals will take away bones as well. You begin to think about the bones of the fingers and toes and the feet and all those sorts of things. But they found a goodly portion of the remains that were left behind, but they had been burned. That makes this kind of a daunting challenge. The forensic anthropologist will do their assessment on the body, but it's at the end of the day that the forensic pathologist is the one that actually signs a death certificate and lists what the cause and manner of death is. They classified Tylee's manner of death. Remember, we have 5. We've talked about this before, but we have 5, and they classified her manner of death as homicide. But the cause is very interesting. Her cause of death is nonspecific homicidal trauma. And you hear that many times when you have these kind of fragmented bodies like this. You know the cause of death was something that was at the hand of another, and that's what defines a homicide, death at the hand of another. That's what you're saying when you actually use that term. It's going to be violent, traumatic, but beyond that, they can't say. It's like saying gunshot wound or strangulation or bludgeoning or stabbing or some kind of blunt force trauma. The forensic pathologist said he couldn't go any further than that. So this becomes, at that point in time, in our world, in the medical legal world, that this becomes a kind of a circumstantial event, right? And you're assessing what you have remaining from the physical remains, and then you're coupling that with the circumstance in which the body is found. You've got a body that there has been great effort that has been put forth to render the body down by fire and then cover it to obscure it from view. So that in and of itself gives us an indication that you've got something very nefarious at work here, and that's what the forensic pathologist had to work with, and that was their final ruling.
But there was one part of this that kind of stood out to me, and that is they identified heart, both lungs, one kidney. You mentioned portions of bowel and liver, but they found small fragments of brain matter. I know, obviously, that they've got multiple bags. Her body didn't come in intact, but are we talking about the total destruction of a human being beyond it's enough that she's dead, but now we're smashing her head? Is that what had to happen for there to be brain matter?
Hard to say. And let me tell you why. You've got a real feel for this, Dave. When you have thermal injuries, okay, and thermal injuries it's not just an antemortem event. You can have thermal injuries to a body post-mortem. Many things happen dynamically. You can get heat-related fractures of the body, okay, of the bone itself. So the bone will actually crack as a result of exposure to heat as it's beginning to break down. If you have the skull and they didn't have the intact skull, they talked about like the area around the supraorbital ridges. There's a few focal areas that remain. You have to wonder, did Tylee's skull fracture as a result of a heat fracture being exposed to intense flame, and then you've got brain matter that's leaching out? Or is this something that was maybe part of the causation of her death, and you had brain matter that was extruding in some way at the time of death, and then they find it there? So that, again, is one of these things that's very difficult to assess. And heat fractures, anything that occurs in death, those fractures are going to appear differently, particularly to the trained eye of a forensic anthropologist, where you have some kind of antemortem event where you'll have associated hemorrhage surrounding the points of fracture and all that stuff. You don't have a lot to go on here because a lot of the soft tissue has been rendered down. And that's one of the big things that we look to in forensic pathology is if we have soft tissue, that's going to give us an indication of things like bruises or contusions and scratches, marks, ligature marks, even gunshot wounds. We've talked about range of fire on the show before, deposition of soot. Somebody's been cracked in the head with a hammer, perhaps. You'll have markings on the outer soft tissue that give you an indication of laceration. And you don't have that to deal with, and it's very nonspecific. But my eye in this case is drawn to something that the forensic anthropologist mentioned on the stand. And that is that she, given her extensive training and background, she saw striking evidence found on the pelvis. She opined from the stand that what she saw was an attempt at dismemberment. And we had heard this before, but they were very nonspecific about this dismemberment, this whole issue with dismemberment. My thought was, where are they getting that from? Did you see saw marks on the bone? That's not what she's seeing. According to Dr. Christensen, she had seen great external force that was exerted to the bones of the pelvis. It's very nonspecific, but I hesitate to say crushing, but there's kind of these like linear marks that gives you an idea of a downward strike of something. So, are we talking about an axe? Are we talking about a pickaxe, which I think has been mentioned before, in order to break the body apart, to try to render it down? Because you have to make a body manageable if you're going to try to render it down. And sometimes that just doesn't happen. The forensic anthropologist did mention that this is not typical of a traditional, quote unquote, dismemberment, where you would go to a joint, perhaps, and saw through a joint, break down the elements of the body. That's not what was happening. That's not what they were seeing. This is an odd place, Dave. It's very odd that you would have fractures in the pelvic region of Tylee's body that are associated with some kind of strike, downward force that's occurring. It sounds almost half-hearted, just like the burning, because her body was not totally rendered down. You know, it takes 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in a crematory of like constant fire. They're not doing that here. They're using wood, apparently, in order to fuel this. They did a very shoddy job because they left behind all of these remnants of bone and organs as well. They did not finish the job. It seems like it was something that was done quite hastily.
In reality, I mean, could they determine that the markings that showed they were trying to dismember occurred before or after fire?
These are going to be post-mortem injuries, and the direct quote from Dr. Christensen is that there were 5 areas of sharp force trauma to the left hip bone, and they were not the result of a disease process. You know, this is kind of speculative, but you're thinking about someone that's going to go to the trouble of conducting a dismemberment. You have to have the right tools for the job. And if you're talking about strikes with some kind of weapon that's being swung downward, that sounds like bad preparation. You're not thinking this process through. It's certainly not somebody that would have had experience with butchering, say, for instance, an animal like a deer. You know what you need. You're going to have a hacksaw. You're going to have a sharp knife. All these things that come along with that kind of experience. You're using some type of item that's just a weapon or a tool of convenience. I'll be very interested to see what the trace evidence people have to say about this case. What did they find? All signs for me point to that red barn out there. I've always thought that something had happened, because if you're going to purpose yourself to dismember or render down human remains, you have to have a sequestered area to do that. You have to have a location where you can do this under cover, where nobody's going to take notice of it. You have to have a certain amount of privacy. This is not something that you're just going to do, out in the open in your backyard. This is something where you're going to need cover for it. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This Sunday, iHeartRadio brings you live to Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara for the Super Bowl 60 tailgate concert, presented by NetApp. It's the ultimate pregame party, featuring an exclusive performance from Teddy Swims. Your front row experience will be on iHeartRadio stations across the country and the free iHeartRadio app this Sunday at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Then, after the concert, tune in to the Super Bowl 60 pregame show on NBC.
Are you a fraud-paying American? 1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has been a victim of identity fraud. With LifeLock, if your identity is stolen, they fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Last year, billions in refunds were stolen. Could be from your salary, overtime, or second job. Gone. But this year, you don't need to stay a victim, because this tax season, fraud-paying American is something no American should have to claim. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
At CVS, it matters that we're not just in your community, but that we're part of it. It matters that we're here for you when you need us, day or night. And we want everyone to feel welcomed and rewarded. It matters that CVS is here to fill your prescriptions and here to fill your craving for a tasty and, healthy snack. At CVS, we're proud to serve your community because we believe where you get your medicine matters. So visit us at cvs.com or just come by our store. We can't wait to meet you. Store hours vary by location.
You ever wonder how far an EV can take you on one charge? Well, most people drive about 40 miles a day, which means you can do all daily stuff no problem. Go to work, grab the kids at school, get the groceries, and still have enough charge to visit your in-laws in the next county. But they don't need to know that. And the best part, you won't have to buy gas at all. The way forward is electric. Explore EVs that fit your life at electricforall.org.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.